Israel is sending a message to the Hamas terrorist organization that they better not play games with us. There is no immunity zone, and Hamas understands what awaits it on the way to phase B of this deal, but it is demanding that the international force deal only with maintaining the ceasefire. And speaking of ceasefire, it seems to be stuck, and it is becoming increasingly doubtful that Hamas will ever disarm. But the IDF is erasing its terror infrastructure meter by meter in Gaza. Elsewhere, President Trump gave an interview in which he said it might have been a violation of the ceasefire for Israel to take out a senior Hamas figure this past week, and we'll bring you more details about this announcement. President Trump is also considering whether to give Israel the green light for a campaign to cross Hezbollah, and the Lebanese army is trying to present achievements while the IDF continues preparations for a military campaign, and Israeli officials are warning that if this becomes necessary, the United States won't be like an explosion in this region. Speaking of the region, White House envoy Thomas Barak was in Jerusalem to discuss regional developments on Monday, and apparently he and Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu reached an understanding on Syria, and we'll bring you all the details about this as well. And further afield, Iran is looking for revenge for the humiliating defeat that they suffered in the 12-day war against Israel, and their plans are promoting an unusual spike in terror alerts worldwide. In our special report, we'll tell you which countries are in the crosshairs, including the United States, where 4 pro-Palestinian activists planned a terrorist attack in Los Angeles in the New Year's Eve. The plot was discovered and stopped, but now we have to wonder if there are more such plots out there around the world. And meanwhile, in an unprecedented move at the United Nations, Israel and the United States are working to drain UNRWA's budget, and President Trump is suing the BBC over heavily edited coverage of a speech that he made several years ago, demanding $10 billion in compensation. Welcome to Boots on the Ground. I'm your host Yair Pinto, bringing you the full truth about what's happening in Israel. Today, we will light the third Hanukkah candle, so I hope you're having a happy holiday season. Alongside the targeted eliminations of terrorists in the Gaza Strip and Lebanon, the IDF's Golani Brigade forces have been operating in recent weeks in the Yellow Line area in eastern Rafah to destroy above ground but also underground terror infrastructure of Hamas. Right side was the link between the strategic planning and the execution on the ground, and removing him from the equation dealt Hamas a severe blow, creates an organizational fracture, and also removes an obstacle on the road to phase B of the Trump agreement. However, in the American administration, they are concerned that the elimination of Raed Saad, which they were briefed on only about 20 minutes after it happened, could make it harder to move to phase B in the American plan for Gaza, which will be at the center of the conversations between Netanyahu and Trump when they meet in Florida at the end of the month. A political source noted, however, that journalists make headlines and hysteria. There is close coordination between the two countries. Speaking of which, at a conference initiated by the United States Central Command, representatives of the countries will discuss the list of participations in the military force as part of Phase 2 of the Trump plan to end this war in the Gaza Strip. In response to these events and rumors about what might happen next, Hamas leader in the Gaza Strip, Khalil al-Haya, announced his organization's position ahead of implementing the second phase of the agreement. They include a refusal to disarm and a demand that the international force deal only with maintaining the ceasefire. Senior security officials in Israel say that Hamas is trying to remain in power with its weapons, and that President Trump must give Israel a green light to complete the destruction of Hamas. We will also bring you some new details from the meetings between Netanyahu and Trump's envoy Tom Barak on Monday, and amongst other things, it was determined that the civilian dialogue with Lebanon will be expanded. There were also discussions about Turkey's involvement in the Gaza Strip and the issue of normalization with Saudi Arabia, and we'll bring you all the details. Meanwhile, this week, ambassadors and representatives from many countries arrived for a tour in southern Lebanon, which included a trip down inside a Hezbollah tunnel. However, The deadline set for the Lebanese National Army to demolish these tunnels and otherwise disarm Hezbollah is approaching, and Hezbollah shows no signs of truly disarming. In other news, senior figures in Israel's security establishment are not surprised by the horrific attacks in Sydney on Sunday. The Mossad sent several warnings to Australian law enforcement agencies prior to this attack. Although it appears that ISIS inspired this attack, Iran is known to be sponsoring and encouraging many similar, smaller terror cells all over the world, not only in Australia. Intelligence officials warn of a sharp rise in the volume of alerts for Iranian-directed attacks against Jewish communities against the backdrop of the severe damage to Iran's capabilities in the war with Israel. For instance, just yesterday in the United States, it was announced that 4 pro-Palestinian activists planned a terrorist attack in Los Angeles on New Year's Eve. They intended to plant explosive devices in 5 locations and detonate them exactly at midnight. Jewish communities worldwide are on alert as law enforcement teams search for more possible terror plots. And meanwhile, in an unprecedented move at the United Nations, Israel and the United States are working to drain UNRWA's budget in close cooperation with the American administration, intended to disconnect the Palestinian Refugee Agency from the mechanisms of aid and reconstruction in the Gaza Strip and also in Judea and Samaria. Finally, President Trump is suing the BBC over the edited coverage of a speech he gave several years ago demanding $10 billion in compensation in an apparent attempt to teach the British Broadcasting Corporation a lesson about its bad habits of putting lies and fake news at the core of its thinking. So we have a lot to talk about today, so let's dive into the details. I'm Yair Pinto, and this is your Boots on the Ground report about what's happening in Israel on day 802 of the war against Hamas, Hezbollah, the Houthis in Yemen, the Shia militias in Iraq, and all the other armed groups in this region that are operating under the control of Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guards Corps, which is the head of the axis of evil in the Middle East. A moment before we start, I want to call on you to keep spreading the truth. We need your help to reach as many people as possible with what's happening here in Israel. So please share our content and don't forget to hit that subscribe button and help us grow. We'll start in today's report with the latest events in the Gaza Strip. Golani Brigade combat team forces under the command of the Gaza Division have been operating in recent weeks in the Yellow Line area in eastern Rafah to destroy above ground and underground terrorist infrastructure and to remove any immediate threat to the forces and to the state of Israel. The forces located weapons and surveillance equipment that Hamas terrorists used against the IDF forces that are operating in the area and destroyed several terrorist infrastructures and eliminated terrorists who were inside the routes and posed an immediate threat to our forces. IDF forces under the Southern Command are deployed in the area in accordance with the ceasefire agreement framework and will continue to operate to remove any immediate threat. On Saturday, the IDF and the Israeli security authorities eliminated Raed Said, the deputy commander of the terrorist organization's military wing, who was close to Muhammad Def and was amongst the planners of the October 7, 2023 massacre. Raed was at the top of the IDF and the Israeli security authorities' most wanted list over the past 2 years. Later, on Saturday, Israel officially confirmed Said's elimination, saying that he was traveling in a vehicle along the coastal route when an IDF intelligence and Israel security authority tracked his movement and an Israeli Air Force aircraft struck the vehicle that he was driving in western Gaza City. To clearly present Israel's position, the impressive elimination of the mega-terrorist Raed Said, the head of operations for the Hamas terrorist organization and one of the architects of the October 7 terrorist attack, is not an isolated tactical event, but a move with systemic significance. Raed was not merely a senior field officer, but a key link connecting strategic planning, combat doctrine, and operational implementation. He led the rocket array and was a central partner in the updating of Hamas's combat concept, adapting the organization to the reality of prolonged fighting, civilian attrition, and growing international pressure against Israel. And recently, he ensured coordinated efforts against the IDF during the ceasefire. In his elimination lies a double and clear message. One message is to Hamas, and in particular to the Izzadin el-Haddad, today the head of Hamas in Gaza, that there is no immunity for the planning echelon. Even those operating behind the scenes, shaping doctrine and managing operational continuity are in the crosshairs. Israel is also sending a message to all concerned that is not satisfied with merely managing the war. It is setting accounts with the architects of the massacre. In this sense, the elimination is not an obstacle to phase B of the Trump agreement, but the removal of an obstacle on the way to it. It reduces Hamas's ability to negotiate under threat, maintain an illusion of operational control, or cling to fantasies of external protection and international freeze. Furthermore, the loss of a figure like Raed Said does not leave only a personal vacuum, but an organizational fracture. This is damage to the organizational memory and to the ability to connect between systems and means of attack, including rockets, raids, and consciousness. Even if a replacement is appointment, professional continuity is harmed, and the tempo, the initiative, and coordination are not resources built overnight. This is a crack in Hamas's deep layer, not an immediate collapse, but an ongoing weakening, a step in the right direction of Hamas being completely terminated. So to make a brief comment about all of this, in the last 24 hours, there has been a lot of noise in the media about how Israel has damaged its position with President Trump by taking out Saad, but I don't think that we should take these reports very seriously. The headlines about President Trump being angry about what this might do to his ceasefire plans are not supported by any actual statements by Trump himself, either official communications or social media posts or anything else. I think that these headlines are simply clickbait with nothing behind them, and in any case, it's very easy to see the broader implications of this move. For Israel, this is a clear signal. Israel is not waiting only for political decisions, but is exploiting the twilight zone between Phase A and Phase D of the ceasefire agreement. The elimination signals that stalling, especially around the issue of the remains of the last hostage, Master Sergeant Ran Gavelli, will transfer into the loss of Hamas assets deep inside the Gaza City area, even under international constraints. This is a calculated use of a time window in which pressure on Israel exists, but has not yet consolidated into a binding mechanism. The elimination also makes clear that Israel will not accept a reality in which an international force becomes a de facto immunity umbrella for Hamas. Any attempt to freeze the arena while preserving terrorist leadership will be met with targeted action, even if surgical. And amidst all of this, Washington continues to walk a very thin line, pushing for Phase B and restraining Israel on the one hand, and understanding that Hamas is not an emerging political actor, but a terrorist organization with active fighting leadership on the other. Finally, Saad's elimination provides the United States with convenient deniability, as I'm sure they're not sorry to see him go, especially as a result of focused Israeli action against a clear target without immediately collapsing the political track. To sum up, the elimination at the strategic junction is not a one-off event, but the shaping of the threshold conditions for the day after, because a political phase will not be built on top of a living terrorist infrastructure, but the transition between phases of war is not an immunity zone. It is a space for action. Speaking of action, in light of the reports in recent weeks, the biggest question for Israel's perspective is regarding whether the Hamas terrorist organization will ever disarm of its weapons. But this question is not just being asked in Israel. Against the backdrop of the American efforts to advance to Phase B of the deal, there is pessimism amongst the countries participating in this program. The mood concerns the implementation of the next stages, and especially the possibility of Hamas disarming. At this stage, international teams have been sent to the Civil Military Coordination Center under American command, These are teams that were previously involved in this armament of armed factions when wars ended in different places around the world, including Sri Lanka, the Balkans, and Northern Ireland. But the conditions in Gaza are very different from what existed in those places, and so it's not clear what the protocols will be in this case. Furthermore, while in Israel and the United States there is full optimism regarding progress in the plan, but according to the sources close to the process, there are many problems that will have to be worked out, and at the moment, little actual progress is being made. The different aspects of the plan, which all have to work together in order to bring it to the desired end state, are stuck. This includes the Peace Council, the multinational stabilization forces, and the technocratic Palestinian government. Finally, according to a senior Western official involved in implementing this plan, there is a great doubt that the terrorist organization will indeed be forced to give up its weapons that it holds in Gaza. However, in the coming days, United States Central Command is convening a conference in Doha, Qatar, to plan the international stabilization force expected to deploy in Gaza. This force, according to informed sources, is expected to be stationed only within the yellow zone that is under IDF control and not reach the red zone where Hamas controls. The bottom line in all this is that a number of sources involved in the talks say that the Americans are trying to keep all frameworks in place and keep the Israelis relatively restrained on all fronts. And yet, everyone agrees everything ultimately depends on Netanyahu's meeting with Trump later this month in Florida, in the United States, where decisions will be made. So don't believe any fake news and empty headlines. Stay tuned to TBN Israel, where we will bring you the full truth. In a moment, we'll continue to the news from the Northern Arena, but first, I want to remind you that here at Boots on the Ground, we bring you the full truth about what's happening in Israel, and we need you to support us and to help us spread the truth. The best way to do that is by clicking on the subscribe button if you haven't already. And now, before we continue with all the news that's coming out of Israel, I want to speak to you for just a moment about one of our partners. As we enter Christmas, this season, our hearts return to Bethlehem and to the birth of Jesus, as well as his ministry here in the land of Israel. That ministry continues today, but ordinary Israelis have been through so much in the past 2 years, and recovery is slow as communities slowly rebuild, families heal, and the tourism sector, which is vitally important here in Israel, as well also in all cities like Jerusalem, Bethlehem, is still recovering. Israel is healing, but it takes time, it takes faith, and it takes friends. So when people ask, how can I help Israel right now? I say, bless Israel this season. That's why I stand together with Arza, an Israeli small business that I've partnered with for years now. Arza works with artisans in Jerusalem, in Galilee, and Bethlehem to create handmade pieces from the Holy Land. Each season, they gather these gifts into an Arza box. Whether you've never been here before or walked these streets that you can see behind me, it's a taste of the land of the Bible. Many on the Arza team served in Israel's defensive forces, the IDF, in the front lines during these 2 years of war. So when you purchase an Arza box, you bless Israel, you keep small businesses alive, and you help families rebuild. This year's Christmas box is Nativity Night, bringing that holy night in Bethlehem into your home. So go to arzabox.com/TBNIL and use the coupon code TBNIL for 20% off of your subscription. Again, that's arzabox.com/TBNIL and use the coupon code TBNIL for an extra 20% off of your subscription. Bless Israel this Christmas, support Israeli artisans, bring the Holy Land into your home. Now, we are switching our focus to the Northern Arena, as this week the IDF eliminated 3 Hezbollah terrorists in southern Lebanon. Under stormy weather conditions in the north, which could create an advantage for the enemy, the Northern Command ordered an increase in the operational alertness of Division 91 forces at the 5 IDF outposts inside Lebanon, as well as along the Blue Line. And now, let's talk about the real situation. The diplomacy and crush the media lies. This is what's happening. The White House Middle East convoy Thomas Barak arrived in Israel on Monday amidst frustration over the lack of sufficient action by the internationally recognized government in Lebanon to disarm Hezbollah. In Jerusalem, they warned that the terrorist organization is recovering on all fronts and sent a threatening message that we will not wait forever to deal with this growing threat. But in practice, Israel is waiting for a green light from the Trump administration, which does not want to see deterioration in the peace that is achieved in the Middle East. And with all of that in mind, this week, the United States asked Israel to give the Lebanese government additional time to complete the demilitarization of Lebanon south of the Litani River. The Americans made clear to the Lebanese that if they do not act now, they will not be able to stop Israel from acting. Israel's message in return to the Americans, and through them to the Lebanese, is as stated: we will not wait forever, and that in Israel's basket of responses, there is also the option of intensive action. Furthermore, just yesterday, the IDF revealed a map of eliminations that it carried out in the south of the country since the beginning of October and said it eliminated at least 40 terrorists in 30 different villages. The IDF spokesperson's office added that these terrorists joined more than 380 terrorists eliminated since the ceasefire went into effect, during which the Hezbollah terrorist organization violated the agreement more than 1,900 times. The assessment in Israel is that the Lebanese government wants to act to disarm Hezbollah, but is not capable of doing so amidst the terrorist organization's threat to internal confrontation within Lebanon, meaning renewed civil war if this move is carried out by force. Also, the capability of the Lebanese army in the country suffering from a deep economic crisis is limited, and despite the fact that the government in Beirut transferred budgets to the army, it is struggling to recruit more soldiers and also suffers from shortages of equipment. And amidst these developments, Tom Barak, the United States ambassador to Turkey, who also serves as President Trump's envoy to Syria and previously also dealt with the Lebanese file, arrived in Jerusalem on Monday for meetings with Prime Minister Netanyahu and other senior Israeli officials. In Washington, as stated, they asked Israel for additional time, but understand that in the absence of determined Lebanese action, there will be a need to act independently. Senior Israeli sources said that Israel is identifying across all fronts that Hezbollah is beginning the process of intensive rehabilitation. In parallel to the Barak-Netanyahu meeting, the Lebanese army held a tour on Monday for ambassadors from the United States, Saudi Arabia, France, Egypt, and additional representatives, even including from Iran. The army presented the delegation with a review of its activities across Lebanon and also brought the representatives into what appeared to be a Hezbollah terror tunnel. The Lebanese army is trying to project that it is completing the move to disarm Hezbollah in southern Lebanon, defined as the first stage, whose deadline was set until the end of the civil year. In the meantime, the Lebanese claimed to the Americans that they managed to demilitarize about 80% of southern Lebanon, but Israeli officials have expressed doubts about this and about whether Lebanon will meet the year-end deadline that Washington set for disarming Hezbollah. Israel did agree to open civilian negotiations with Lebanon, and next week another meeting will take place, but the tension, as stated, is rising. The issue will be discussed in Netanyahu's meetings with Trump in Florida at the end of the month, and then it will likely become clear whether Israel has a green light for action in Lebanon. Here at TBN Israel, we will continue to report on all the events in Israel's northern arena, and we'll continue to the other fronts in just a moment, but 1 second. If you haven't yet clicked on the subscribe button, now is the time to help us share the truth to anyone who's willing to listen. And now, we're switching our focus to international events, as the horrific attack in Sydney, Australia on Sunday did not surprise senior figures in Israel's security establishment too much, especially the Mossad personnel. They knew a few weeks ago and decided to change their usual policy of operating in the shallows. The Mossad put on the table the alerts and the intelligence about terrorist cells operating and organizing in Australia, and in addition, other countries in Europe in a transparent and clear manner for the entire public and the decision makers in Australia and in Europe to act against these terrorist attacks. The opening statement of the report spoke of terror without an Iranian fingerprint, high compartmentalization, recruitment of foreigners, use of criminals, and covert communications. Israeli officials further explained that for years the Iranian regime has viewed terror as a tool to exact a price from Israel while harming innocents around the globe without paying military, diplomatic, or economic costs. Under this logic, terror bodies operate while maintaining a space of deniability and a disconnect between the violent activities and Iran. A senior security official added on Monday, after the attack, that the terrorist cells operating in Australia are very numerous and are directly connected to Iran, to Hamas, and to Hezbollah, but the model that Iran is running in Australia is broad and encompasses many targets worldwide. The official added that we will see such events also in Europe and in other targets around the world. Muslims have penetrated every corner of Europe, in Asia, in Australia. There is a guiding hand advancing terror outline. This is done through direction on social media networks. There are those who ensure funding and even supply explosive devices and weapons exactly as is done on a daily basis, also here in Judea and Samaria in Israel, by external terrorist elements such as Hamas and Hezbollah, who direct and finance under Iran's auspices through the Hamas and the Islamic Jihad in Turkey or also in Lebanon and Qatar. Furthermore, in the intelligence community, they warn of a sharp rise in the scope of alerts for Iranian-directed attacks against Jewish communities around the world. And according to assessments, Iran is working to roll out revenge attacks in countries worldwide against the backdrop of the severe harm to its capabilities and its proxies during the 12-day war in June between Israel, Iran, and the United States of America. This is all alongside assessments in Australia that the deadly attack against the country's Jewish community was inspired by ISIS and is part of a local organization of a father and son. However, someone paid for all of the travel, the training, the weapons, and other logistics that were used in this attack, and that someone is likely Iran. At the Mossad, they are following with concern Iran's efforts to establish and roll out terrorist infrastructures to harm Jewish communities, Jewish buildings, and population centers where Jews live, including Israeli and Jewish tourists in target countries around the world. According to assessments, the emphasis is on countries in South Africa, Thailand, India, South America, as well as major cities in Europe. A few weeks ago, the Mossad helped expose a wide-scale terrorist infrastructure in Germany and in Austria, and in the intelligence community, they assessed that the trend is expected to expand. At the same time, the intelligence community continues to monitor Iran's activities under the guidance of the Ayatollah regime, which includes funding, direction, and promotion of terrorist infrastructures and transfers of weapons to Syria, Yemen, Lebanon, the Sinai Peninsula in Egypt, Judea and Samaria in Israel, and additional countries around the world. The goal, according to the assessments, is to create another ring of fire, another axis of evil around Israel, which were significantly pushed back during the last 2 years of wars. And here, at TBN Israel, we will continue to update you on all these developments. So let's move to the next topic, but first, I want to once again invite you to share this content and to subscribe to TBN Israel on YouTube. And now, we're staying on the topic of terror attacks against Jews and Israelis worldwide, as the FBI announced on Monday that it foiled a planned terrorist attack in Los Angeles in the United States of America on New Year's Eve and arrested 4 suspects. According to the FBI, the 4 drafted a detailed document describing a plan to plant explosive devices at 5 sites in the Los Angeles area with the goal of harming 2 American companies whose names were not disclosed. The explosives were supposed to detonate simultaneously at midnight between December 31st, 2025 and January 1st, 2026. The arrests of these activists were carried out over the weekend in Lucerne Valley, California, where, according to assessments, they intended to conduct a test ahead of a planned attack. A preliminary indictment was filed against the four for conspiracy and possession of an explosive device. According to a report on the Fox News network, the four identified themselves as members of a particularly radical branch of the far-left organization called the Turtle Island Liberation Front, which is a pro-Palestinian, anti-government, and anti-law enforcement organization. Turtle Island is a term used for North America by some descendants of indigenous people and by activists for their rights. And on the organization's Instagram page, it is written that its headquarters is in Los Angeles and that its goal is to liberate Turtle Island from the illegal American empire and to also liberate Palestine, Hawaii, and Puerto Rico as a path to a future of peace and security. In additional posts that it has written, amongst other things, how is Turtle Island connected to Palestine, and resistance is the deepest form of love. According to the FBI, a fifth person who is believed to have belonged to the same radical TILF group was arrested in New Orleans recently on suspicion of planning a different attack. So, what do you think about all of this? Let me know in the comments section. In any case, this is another example of why we fight for the truth every single day here at TBN Israel. And when I say fight, I mean it, because every social network that exists doesn't particularly like the type of content that we put out, and we are in an era where it's hard to share the truth and not be censored. But we're not the only ones that are fighting for this very important principle. US President Donald Trump filed a lawsuit against the British Broadcasting Corporation this week, BBC, claiming it defamed him following a biased edit of his speech from January 6, 2021, which made it seem as though he encouraged his supporters to storm the US Capitol. The lawsuit was filed in a federal court in Miami, Florida, and in it, Trump demands a massive $10 billion in damages, including $5 billion for defamation and another $5 for violations of Florida state law. The background to the lawsuit is BBC's documentary, Trump, A Second Chance, which aired before the most recent presidential elections. According to Trump and his lawyers, a segment of his speech there was edited in a harmful and defamatory manner. Last month, his attorney, Algirado Brito, sent a warning letter to the BBC in which he demanded a public apology, removal of the film, and its complete shelving, as well as appropriate financial compensation. He warned that if the demands were not met, Trump would sue for no less than $1 billion. The BBC confirmed that it had received the letter and stated that it would respond in due course, and the documentary was subsequently removed from the network's online player. The BBC's chairman, Samir Shah, wrote in a separate letter that the complaint was examined by the Ethical Committee in January and also in May, and that the findings were passed to the Panorama program team. Shah admitted, in hindsight, it would have been right to take more formal steps. He added that the BBC accepts the claims that the edit created an impression of a direct call for violence and apologized for a mistake in the judgment. But things didn't end there. BBC Director General Tim Davie and the head of the news division, Dvorah Tornes, resigned. Subsequently, the corporation issued an official apology to Trump, but completely rejected the demand for financial compensation and claimed there is no basis for a defamation lawsuit. In a BBC statement, it was written that its lawyers responded to the letter from the Trump team, and that alongside acknowledging the error in the edit, the network strongly opposes the claim that this constitutes defamation. Trump, for his part, was not satisfied with the apology and decided to carry out his threat and to turn the legal dispute with one of the world's most powerful media organizations into a wide-scale public battle. To make a personal comment, there are a lot of people, organizations, and even entire countries that are watching the BBC and other main news outlets on a daily basis to get their information from. And Israel is at the top of the list of what they are reporting about. I've had many occasions to be completely shocked by nonsense that were heard on these channels. this is not harmless. It deeply affects the lives of millions of people, including my family and me here in Israel. And so I take it personally. I think that these media outlets should report the truth and cross-check their facts. That's journalism, basic. And the truth matters, because when people are hearing false information or partial information about a story, they form the wrong opinion. And this is bad for all of us. So I'm really glad to see that someone finally did call them out, and in a big way, publicly. And I hope that they will pay and learn that next time there are consequences to what they report about. I don't know if it will completely change the story, as we are faced by a massive enemy with armies of money and reporters that are spreading lies about Israel. In any case, here at TBN Israel, we will continue to report boots on the ground style, the whole truth, and we will also continue to ask you to support us, spread the truth, so that people will know what's happening around the world and will know how to pray for the situation. Remember, this is a spiritual war. The enemy is using half-truths and lies to change people's hearts against Israel and especially against God. So let's unite in sharing the truth and in praying for the peace of Jerusalem. Nes means miracle in Hebrew, and Hanukkah teaches us that miracles are often quiet day by day.
That's right, and in these months, we've seen that the same thing has happened. Moments of protection, soldiers who should have been injured walking away unharmed, families that are finding strength they didn't even know they had. These are the small miracles that remind us that God is still here in Israel. So guys, it's night number 3 of Hanukkah. Let's bless the candles.
Yeah, can you join us in this lighting of the candles? If you've been with us on night number 1, 2, you should already know how to do this.
You should know all the blessings by heart in Hebrew.
Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam,
asher קידשנו במצוותיו, וציוונו להדליק נר של חנוכה. אמן. ברוך אתה אדוני, אלוהינו מלך העולם, שעשה ניסים לאבותינו בימים ההם, בזמן הזה. Amen. This is all real, guys.
Yeah.
Real wind, real candles.
This is not a green screen studio.
Not a green screen at all.
Definitely, Mati. What are you thankful for this 2 years?
Oh, for so many things. God's supernatural protection, for my family being kept safe, healthy. There's been a lot.
Yeah.
For the growth of our YouTube channel, for so many good things.
Yeah, definitely. And I'm thankful for all of you guys for standing with us, for watching, for sharing the truth, for praying for the peace of Jerusalem. It means the world to our team and to us here in Israel. So keep praying for the peace of Jerusalem.
Happy Hanukkah, guys. Hello, this is Mati here in Jerusalem with TBN Israel.
This is Yair Pinto from TBN Israel here in Jerusalem. TBN Israel is keeping viewers informed with Israel-focused news, culture, and what God is doing in this land.
Support TBN Israel today online at tbn.org/Israel. Thank you.